Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates, with your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi, everybody. This is Cindy with another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And today I have a special guest, Dr. Paul Abend. And he's not only a doctor, he's also a dad with an autistic son. And I brought him on today because we are fighting the same fight. We've got the same passions, the same goals. And he's very knowledgeable about what's going on in New Jersey with autism. And we've got a lot to talk about today, but our connection, the way I know you, well, we kind of met randomly, but it turns out that my daughter Patty was your son's teacher. So so that was very cool to find out. And don't tell anybody, but your son was Patty's favorite student.
He was our favorite teacher.
So we'll start the interview like I do with everybody. I'm just curious to know about you and your son and your experience with him. So let's go back. First of all, I know you have a daughter too. Is he your firstborn or is your daughter the oldest?
My daughter's the oldest, and then I have three. So
you do?
Then
Okay.
I have a middle son, and then Mikey's the youngest.
Oh, Mikey's the youngest. Okay. So when your wife was pregnant with him, were there any kind of red flags, anything that came up?
Nope.
Okay.
And ironically, both of us are physicians and we were in medical school, so the word autism was rarely ever mentioned. It was like 1 in 10,000.
Right.
So you never heard it. It was never anything that we thought about during the pregnancy.
Right. Yeah. So how old is he? 24?
Yep.
He's 24. Okay. Yeah. Because my son was born in 1989 and it was the same statistics, like a couple in 10,000. It was like something you never heard of
Right.
At the time. So yeah. All right. So then was he born? Were there any complications at his birth or no? APGAR scores were
nothing.
good, all that?
APGARs were all good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then how about his development? Was it on time or delayed?
Everything was on time. And I think it was around 15 months or so that, my wife noticed something, was starting to go awry. And what I noticed, the first thing I noticed as a father, mothers and fathers always notice things differently, was that he started hiding behind the couch and started going into small crevices. I thought that seems a bit odd, come out in the open, but the open was too much for him. And he started regressing that way. And then we took him to doctors, colleagues of ours, and they said, oh, it's fine. Everything is fine. And, by 18 months, he wasn't verbal anymore. He had language. He started losing whatever language he had. He didn't exhibit any of the early signs that we often see with autism, with toe walking or flapping the hands, stereotypic behavior, but just definitely starting to regress into some sort of quiet shell, if you would say. So we had him brought to a developmental pediatrician, pretty well known colleague of ours in New York. And, at first she wasn't sure what it was. So we saw some other people, a lot of terms were being thrown around at that time, central auditory processing, what else? Bipolar, PDD was the interesting one that just came out. It was PDD NOS. We're not sure. We can't say autism, but we're going to come up with this new term. What the hell is that? Pervasive developmental disability. Okay. It's basically autism. We're not stupid. We're reading the DSM-3 book. And that was like, wow, what now? And then it's a frantic movement of, as most people do, is like, we need services. We need those, what can we do? And the shock was still wearing in on us. So we were getting speech therapy and PT, occupational therapy and applied behavioral analysis. And, we're all doing our own directions while we're forgetting about our kids and we're forgetting about everything else in the world. And we started down this path. Obviously, the burden was tipped more towards my wife. I think in my 20 some odd years, it's usually that kind of way. The mom takes over and the father is standing there saying, I'm going to work, but what can I do? And it's chaos starting at a very quick level. And we're not even being able to process what this means at that time. And we just have this optimism, like, okay, if we do X, Y, and Z, we'll be in good shape. So let's get him into a really good school, and let's try to do this, this, and that in therapy. And I was talking to somebody the other day, money starts flowing out, and originally you're, so to speak, bleeding money, and then you're hemorrhaging money over the years, and you're grasping for anything that you're hearing, and you're talking to people. The other thing is that you also are suffering inside dearly, because you know what this is, and something is wrong and you're hurting, but you're not able to express your feelings to each other or anybody else because you're so focused on getting the services and believing that if we do the X, Y, and Z, it's going to work. And certainly not as just parents, but as physicians. I often will say this, I've said it in Washington, I've said it in different places when I've accepted these awards. I say to them, of all the disorders I've ever been exposed to, and I've been exposed to a lot, I did 2 residencies, one in family medicine, one in physical medicine, rehab, pain management. I lived in a world of disability. So I saw children, I constantly with cerebral palsy and AIDS and cancer, everything. And I've cared for them through the years. And what makes autism so difficult is that with those diseases, there's a beginning, there's an end, and there's predictability. Predictability with medications, predictability with functionality and what devices that we need for the house. But with autism, there's a beginning and there's no end, and there's completely unpredictability in this. If you see one kid, you've seen one kid with autism. And that's what makes my colleagues so overwhelmed, but it's so challenging of a disorder. And it's frustrating, but that is what happens. So you have this chaos, and people are running in different directions. You do this, you do that. And unfortunately, you burn up a lot of energy pretty quickly, mentally, physically, and I always say financially. Those are the 3 things. And so that's kind of where the journey was. The start was chaos. Okay, you do this, let's get speech therapy on board. Oh, you don't even know if it's the right one, but you check off the boxes, and we also went to a lot of physicians at that time, and they wouldn't even diagnose him. They wouldn't even treat him. They weren't even sure. They guessed. And that was a bit frustrating. And then they'd start medication. Everybody was on medication, and then he would have side effects. So it becomes a very arduous and very painful process for the child, for us as parents, and certainly the siblings.
I'm glad to hear this coming from another physician, because this is what a lot of parents, go through. And it's like, it's very frustrating because you're looking for doctors to help and they don't really know. You want someone to just give you an answer.
Yeah. And we'd even get into the whole medical comorbidities. That's going to be another big issue, which is what basically motivated me to make a change. But you're going to hear me talk about exactly what you just said. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. So, all right. So I know that your son went to the DLC where my daughter taught, but is that where he started? Did he always go there? Or did you start out somewhere else?
No. So
actually, let's back up, because I'm just curious, because when Robbie would be 31, 32 now. So back then the culture was to cure autism. And parents were looking for anything that would cure them. And they were running to this doctor, this therapy, this vitamin therapy, this treatment, whatever, to try to cure the autism. So you're a little bit behind me. So is that what you were looking for, or you were?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what our mojo is basically, my wife did all the research, found this. I would say, okay, let's do it. I would make all the arrangements and have it done. And, the problem there, and I am, a lot of us, when I say a lot of us, not just parents, there's over 900 physicians with kids with autism in New Jersey. And we have spoken to each other, and we have been down this path, and we have seen these charlatans, and that's what they are, pure charlatans. And we saw the DAN doctors, the Defeat Autism Now doctors. And I remember going to the meetings, and they didn't realize there were physicians sitting in the meetings, and these doctors in the front had published nothing. And they were promising these cures. And all I saw around me was mothers who were desperately looking for any answer they possibly could. And it was so disheartening for me to look at this. And I remember speaking years later to some of my other colleagues who had gone down that path. We all take the same path, and we are hungry looking for some cure. I've had people call me about, what about MRI treatments, you know, and all this other stuff that is insanity, complete insanity. And, you know, they're not paid by insurance, and people are going broke. $500, $1,000, $2,000. We are one of the people who spent literally thousands of dollars on vitamins and alternative treatments from Dandox because we thought this was going to help glutamate. And now we realize that was not the case. Yeah, there'll be little anecdotes out there, but for the most of the population that we now know, in retrospect, that was never his problem. And we'll get into it. So, you know, you run in circles and you grasp at straws, and somebody publishes something and you jump. And that is exacerbating. It is frustrating. It is just, it brings anger to you. There's so much that goes on emotionally inside of you that just gets stuffed down because he's the issue. He's the main focus in the room right now. He's the one. And that's not really where things got bad, believe it or not. Things got bad when he first, you know, he was 2.5 years old, and we got him into a very strong Somerset Hills Learning Center. It was a very strong ABA school, right wing. They did not believe in speech therapy. They did not believe in occupational therapy. And me being a physiatrist who does physical medicine rehab, I deal with strokes at Kessler, and Robert Woodward I trained. Of course you need OT and speech and PT, okay? ABA is not going to do it all. And it was a very right-wing place, and he was 2.5 years old, and Mikey would be 1 minute laughing and playing and doing his thing, and then it was like a light switch. He dropped to the floor, screaming in pain, you know, biting himself, self-injurious, hitting himself, and they were on top of him trying to break that behavior because they said it was a behavior. And I said, it's not a behavior. He's not like this all the time. And I still got speech and OT. It was like you were doing this on the side.
Yes.
You know, nobody, all the other parents were talking to me going, "Oh, you got it, you do it." And we happen to know this person, and he knew that we were both physicians. And of course he was getting speech and OT after school, but we also believed that there was something wrong with my son, you know, that this is not like him. His baseline personality was not a real self-injurious behavior kind of person, but he was clearly in pain. And at that point, they were holding and breaking and holding and breaking down, not realizing that there was a medical issue going on. Later on, years later, they became educated, the world became educated, and there was a lot of apologies, but it was too late at that point, because now you have post-traumatic stress syndrome with my son. Anything related to it was GI. You know, we all knew he had inflammatory bowel disease, he had heartburn, but that's a very interesting story, how we finally arrived at that. But to your point, he went to a very strict school, to answer your question. Clearly it wasn't working. They said, we can't help him anymore. Let's send him into Kennedy Krieger. And I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. So we went the complete opposite to floor time for Stanley Greenspan's method. And we went to Celebrate the Children. They were starting school, and they were new. And again, could not deal with his medical issues. 1 minute he's happy, next minute he's on the floor, he's writhing in pain, and very typical kind of procedure, you know, pressing on the stomach, something's going on, and pulled him out of there and tried to stabilize him. He was at home before he got to the DLC, because nobody at that point wanted him, and the DLC, to their credit, as I always say, accepts everybody. And they're kind of the middle of the road. They have speech and OT, as you know, with Robbie and ABA, and that has now become the norm. You know, it's not one, it's everything, as it should be.
But I'm so glad that you brought this up, though, because I feel like, you know, ABA only focuses on behaviors, and they always keep saying it's behavior. But I keep asking, as I do all these interviews with all these parents, but there's a reason for the behavior. You have to ask why, right. but why? And you found out that he was having GI issues.
So, you know, he started in the house here having escalating in terms of his behaviors, to the point that we took him to pretty prominent people in New York, and who then went on to become Dan Doctor, you know, but before that they were legitimate. We took him to other people, and scopes and money and everything was going through, and medicines were tried, and they were stumped. Nobody could figure out what was going on. In the meantime, my house was literally on DEFCON 3 all the time. And, my poor kids were younger. We were all younger. I mean, we were trying to help them. And at any minute, Mikey was already starting to bang. And he would put his head through the sheetrock. He would be going, biting his hands. He would attack people, and we all had a mission. I mean, you're talking about my daughter, who was probably 10 years old at the time, my other son that was, 5 years old. My wife and I were like, quickly protect him, roll him in a blanket. You grab his feet, you grab his knees, I grab his head, you grab his shoulders. Let's hold him, wait this thing out. And he is with adrenaline coming at you and hard. And he's like an MMA guy. He's throwing people out like they're right and left. And he's only 6 years old. And this story played out every single day, 5, 6, 8 times a day. And we could never leave the house. We could never do anything. And we would kind of hear other parents talk about similar things, but you were in hell. And every day was hell. And everybody was having their issues at that time because, we were injured, physically abused, mentally abused, and we still had to work and go to school and do these things. And we kept taking him to doctors and nobody knew what was going on. And it was the low point of my life, I would say, when I'm asked this question. It was a Saturday night. It was about 8 o'clock at night, and we were holding him down like he had lost it. And he was staring with those eyes at me, help me, help me. And you could see it in his eyes. He was crying for help. And my wife was looking at me and said, call somebody, do something. I mean, we'd run out of everything. And I said, who do you want me to call? Who do you want me to call? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going on here. And I looked at my kids crying, and I looked at my son, and I said, it ends right now. That's it. This is enough. It's been 5 years of back and forth, back and forth. So at that point, once he stabilized, the next day, my wife started looking at some more research because she's more research oriented than I am. And she found Dr. Timothy Bowie up at Harvard, Mass General. And I had the book by Dr. Margaret Bauman on the autobiology of autism. And I had read the book, and she said, this guy must know something. He's got to know. He's a GI doctor. But how are we going to get him there? It's just not going to happen. 6 hours in a car. I don't think there's enough margaritas or drinks or beers to get us through this. And the kid, I mean, every time I ride with this kid, he was kicking and flying, and the kids, it was insane. So I was fortunate enough, being a physician, calling Tim. I just literally patched right into his office. And I said, here's the situation. These are the colonoscopies. These are the endoscopies. He's got inflammatory bowel, gave all the medical terminology. And we have tried everything. And by the way, the last doctor had recommended Tylenol with codeine or going up to OxyContin in a 6-year-old. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. Okay, this is ridiculous. And I presented his case, fortunately, to Tim Bowie, Dr. Timothy Bowie. And he listens, and he said to me, your son has heartburn. He has reflux. I said, what? I said, what are you talking about? Come on. I mean, I told him all the scopes and all the studies. He said, yeah, sure, he has some aptis, ulcers, and inflammatory bowel disease, but he has tremendous heartburn. And I want you to give him not 30 milligrams of Pervasive, but I'm going to order liquid because he doesn't swallow pills, 90 milligrams of Pervasive. I had to sign a waiver at the pharmacy that I took control, but the pharmacy had known I'd be back. And the day after I gave him that, and he recommended some other medicine as well, Pepsid as well, he was better. And I remember sitting there. I mean, he was like 95% better. And I said to him, how do you know this? I mean, I've been to the tri-state area. I've seen everybody. It's been 6 years. Mm-hmm. And he said to me in a very quiet way, I've seen more than anybody else has seen. I've seen these kids. And this is when the literature he was publishing was coming out that 50% of these kids had inflammatory bowel disease, which is similar to like Crohn's and also, and they have heartburn, severe heartburn. So when you're holding them down, you're causing more stress, which is producing more acid, which is causing more pain. So not all behaviors are behaviors, which is Dr. Margaret Bauman. I call her Margaret because she's part of her thing. That's her terminology. She was banging on the desk saying, these kids have other medical issues. They're not just behaviors. And when I heard that and I saw that with Mikey, I then realized, okay, now we've got PTSD. Anytime he has his stool, it's constipated. Anytime he has nausea, anytime he has gas, he will go to the moon. like that.
Mm-hmm.
And later on in our think tank of doctors, which I'll talk to you about that we created, one of our pain specialists who's out of Stanford said, it's like taking your hand and banging it in a door again and again and again. As you start to approach the door, your sympathetic system starts going crazy, hyper. You'll start worrying, oh my God, or someone with a migraine starts to get the aura. That's with a Mikey. Oh, this must be the GI pain. And he starts getting really anxious, and you start using all the techniques in the world to calm him down before he goes to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And, once we'd found that out, I realized, wait a second, all this knowledge is locked up there. Nobody has it here in New Jersey. And by the way, New Jersey at that time was 1 in 65 kids were being diagnosed. 6 years into this, it was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We were leading California. We were leading the whole country. And I simply said, well, this has to stop. We need to do something for everybody else. In his school, he was at that time at the DLC, they started to educate them. I started to educate them about what was this issue of GI. They started to understand it. I went back to the other school and I said, the next time you have stomach cramps, a viral gastroenteritis, put a piece of tape on your mouth. You'd be having behaviors, okay? He's not verbal. He can't tell you that. So holding him down is only going to cause more behaviors and more aggressive PTSD. So with that, it motivated me to first take back the house and calm everybody down and figure out, okay, how can we help everybody behind us who doesn't know? And one of the things I decided was I came up with an idea to start a jet company, private jet company, Angel Network. So I partnered at Morristown Airport with jet owners, and I said to them, we'll be a nonprofit. It was 9/11 at the time. No one's renting your planes. You can get a tax write-off, and we can fly these kids up to Hanscom Airport, 45 minutes, or we can fly people around the world to major centers, and they'll be seen by these world-renowned doctors who have seen more than anybody else. And we launched the company, Autism Escapes. And we started flying people up the same day, people with seizures, people with GI issues, up to see these doctors. And then they came back the same day. I was on the inaugural flight with 2 kids, and it was amazing. And the pilots were in tears. They were so emotional. It's like, this is an amazing thing. The people that were donating the planes were great, overwhelmed by this. And it was finally a way for us to start shining the light on the fact that, hey, these are not just behaviors. These are medical issues. And these kids that are minimally verbal or nonverbal are just reacting to it. So we started that, and obviously it's very costly to do that. I certainly would not do and pay for flights because it's very expensive for people for MRIs and some weird cures, but these are only to be seen by major institutions. That's when someone came to me and said, why don't you have telemedicine? Why don't you start using a screen and bring the doctors to New Jersey? And that was always a joke I had with Dr. Bowie. I'm like, I got to get you to New Jersey. I got to get you to teach these doctors here what's going on. We got to get it out. And Margaret, same thing, Dr. Bauman and some of the other colleagues. And I said, it can't just be all locked up in here. You personally don't have to come here. I just need what's inside your head being disseminated to as many primary doctors and subspecialists as possible. And they agreed. And off I went, and I started what it was called the Autism Think Tank. My goal was to create world-renowned experts, published people in the areas of neurology, which was Dr. Margaret Bauman, GI, Dr. Timothy Bowie, psychiatry, Dr. Charles Henry, Lonnie Zeltzer, Dr. Zeltzer, who's well known for pain management at Stanford, allergy immunology, with Rafi Tadegi, and a group of these people that knew each other, and it was a club. And it took a good 6 months to get everybody to buy in and work out everybody's schedule. And the goal was to present twice a month a case that they had already reviewed. And then they would come on that night with the primary care doctor and the patient. We would see them, they would see us, and it looked like what you're seeing now, like the Brady Bunch. Mm-hmm. Some of them were in, Margaret was in her lab, Tim was in his bedroom, Lonnie's there. It was really quite funny. Mm-hmm. And I put up so much money to do this and so much time, but I truly believe, and this is where it came from, it was my training in physiatry, where every rehab patient has an interdisciplinary team before they go, PT, OT, speech, primary care, physiatry. Well, this population needs it as well. In fact, they need it even more, but they need the best minds in an interdisciplinary way, looking at this child in this particular case. And the first night I remember sitting there and I presented my son, and it was 8 o'clock at night, and they all came on and we talked about Mikey and we started talking about autism. And I wrote on the chalkboard, okay, GI, okay, seizures, fine. These are 50%, 30%. We started talking about hypersympathetic arousal versus the parasympathetic system, which is the calming system. These kids have a very hypersympathetic arousal. Okay, pharmacological treatment versus non-pharmacological treatment, music, touch therapy, all these things. Went through this, we started talking about Mikey. They said, okay, Tim, go ahead, speak. Well, this is what Mikey has such and such and such, and this is what drugs I recommend him to be on. Okay, Margaret, what do you think about what Tim just said? Well, Tim, this is what I have to think about that. I would recommend for he started developing some seizures. Probably this is what I would recommend. Then Lonnie said, well, for pain, let's try this, but let's divide that dose. Oh, hold on 1 minute. Oh, there's some drug interactions going on. Then Chuck Henry would say something about a medication he wanted. Oh, then the other doctors would say, Timothy Bowie, oh, don't use that. That's going to cause constipation. You see the dialogue that was going on? And in literally a half an hour, I sat back and I had just seen all these people and we talked about my son. And I thought to myself, this is amazing. This is what I wanted. He can't advocate for himself, but they knew and they discussed. Remember, first cause no harm was what we were supposed to learn in medical school. We did this. And then we started doing more and more of these cases. And it wasn't just in the United States. Their goal, I mean, these are well-established, credentialed people. They didn't need to do this. They really wanted to be, their mission was to educate the primary care physicians and the specialists in this country and around the world what they knew in their head. And if they go back to their office, they would change the way they practice. And that was where we were born. And the think tank started. And the cases came in, and we're a nonprofit. We had to raise money and do this. And I have to tell you, mom, single mom, 3 kids, 2 kids, whatever. But it was just one case after the next, and getting everybody's schedules. It was a lot of work. But I will tell you, listening to the stories, seeing a video clip of the child, they all were prepared. A whole report was then presented back from them to their primary doctor. They got to see all these people without driving in a car, right in there. And we were doing it then in their homes, in their places. Then we started getting calls in other countries, and we started using interpreters, and we started doing Russia, Israel, India. We just did one in Italy the other night with an interpreter. In Ghana, there's one pediatric gastroenterologist for the entire country. And we were on the Today Show. We educated him, and they came from villages far and wide. And this now grew. But however, there was one component that was missing. And that is that you can't have stabilization just medically. There's got to be psychosocial stabilization to achieve a true balance in this house or in anybody's house. There is an 84% divorce rate. I get it. In fact, someone told me of a statistic on an Oprah many years ago of 1 suicide a month. Oh yeah, I believe it. I mean, to us that are in it, when you're in hell and you're physically, financially, and mentally being abused, yes, at some point you crack. Mm-hmm. It's, to those of us that are in it, a lot of times we hide it. I don't anymore. I haven't for years. And now you realize, because you think, oh, you're the only one doing it. But the reality is I've heard too many stories, thousands of stories, people that will do anything for their child, leaky roofs that haven't been fixed, no vacations, other kids hurting themselves, neglected because their parents are so focused on the kid. They're traumatized. And this is a situation where at the same time, I started bringing in Dr. Robert Nassif, who is one of the most prominent people, written 2 books out of Philadelphia, a psychologist who works with autistic children with autism and adults. He himself has a probably 40-year-old son right now. And I remember we got him involved, and I'm in his book, both his books, and about the think tank, how you could take this energy and move it in a positive way, a bad situation. And he's a dear friend, but he ran conferences for me. And we had fathers on a Friday night. Then the next day we had mothers. And then we had fathers sitting with their backs to their wives and asking them questions. What do you think about your wife? He does it very well. And they say, well, I know they work a lot. And they just need to hear it. And he does this tremendous dynamics. And then he flips them around. And then he does one with siblings. And I thought to myself, this is how we're going to survive if we're going to get through this. We need the best mind, and we need the best psychosocial stabilization that we can with behavioral medicine and care. And that's when we became the Autism Healthcare Collaborative, where we just realized we're going to do as much as we can, raise as much money as we can, and do what has to be done. And this has been going on. We hit our 10th anniversary last year, but the real more exciting news is that we've touched over 10,000 people worldwide.
Okay, that's it for part 1. Be sure to tune in for part 2. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of today's episode. Be sure to join us again next time to hear the second half of the interview on Spectrum Perspectives.